Chapter 1. The original Medusa, decoding the earth goddess and ancient protective secrets. We all hold the image defined by the Roman poet Ovid in Renaissance art. A snake-haired monster, eyes that turn flesh to stone, the ultimate symbol of horror and death. But if we discard the veneer of classical Greco-Roman civilization, a colder, deeper truth emerges. Medusa was not created to be a monster. She was a goddess, a powerful icon of the pre-Olympian cults, religions worshipping the Earth Mother, whose image was co-opted and distorted by the new, dominant gods. Tracing Medusa's origins is tracing a cultural and religious war buried for millennia. To truly understand Medusa, we must understand the Gorgon. The Gorgon was not a single entity, but a group of divine beings. In Hesiod's Theogony, 8th century BCE, Medusa and her two sisters, Euryale and Stheno, are described as daughters of Phorcys and Keto, primordial sea deities. However, a key difference emerges immediately. Medusa is the only Gorgon-born mortal, while her sisters are immortal. This detail is not random. It is the first sign that Medusa held a special role, an intersection between the divine and the human, the eternal and the finite, which is characteristic of deities linked to the Earth Mother's cycle of growth and death. Medusa's primal power resided in her facial symbol, the Gorgonean, the terrifying image of Medusa's face with bulging eyes, protruding tongue, large fangs, and serpentine hair, is one of the most potent and widespread symbols in ancient Greek art. Crucially, the depiction of the Gorgonean was never intended to induce fear in the common sense, but fulfill an apotropaic function, a form of sacred protection by warding off evil spirits and repelling the evil eye. Analyzing the apotropaic function further, we find the Gorgonean carved on temples, household objects, coinage, and most significantly on the aegis shield of two crucial gods, Athena and Zeus. This is a pivotal historical twist. How did a powerful symbol of an entity later deemed a monster come to be used by the supreme gods to protect themselves and the new order? The answer lies in the co-option of the symbol. Zeus and Athena, representing the new Olympian order, the celestial order, could not completely eliminate the power of the ancient earth deities. Instead of destroying it, they integrated that power into their own iconography. They severed the symbol from its source, Medusa, and used it as a tool. Archaeological evidence strongly supports this argument. In ancient sites and museums, the Gorgonean appears even before the literary versions describing Medusa as a monster. She was not a figure created from a story. She was a powerful visual image created from an ancient religious belief. Her terrifying facial image is closely linked to goddesses associated with the cycle of rebirth and death, much like the deities of Egypt and the Near East. The fact that Medusa's face could turn things to stone is interpreted by scholars as a connection to the power of death and the paralysis before the mysteries of the underworld, a power originally belonging to those who ruled the world beyond. Medusa's transformation from a protective goddess into a snake-haired monster can only be understood through the lens of a changing religious system. When the patriarchal pantheon rose to prominence, the goddesses of the old faith, particularly those embodying wildness, ferocity, or uncontrollable power, were demoted. Earth goddesses associated with serpentine imagery, or close ties to wild nature, were transformed into monsters to weaken their influence and legitimize Olympian dominance. Therefore, when we look at Medusa before her hunt by Perseus, we must see a missing goddess, an oppressed cult, and a politically manipulated symbol. She was not a monster born of evil. She was a powerful icon transformed into evil by a new religious empire to ensure its own survival. The truth about the distorted goddess Medusa is a historical tragedy, but her personal tragedy is far deeper and more brutal. How could a goddess who held protective power be betrayed, attacked, and destroyed by the very supreme gods who were meant to protect her? The answer lies in a later text, one that fundamentally changed Medusa's narrative, turning her from a religious symbol into a blamed victim, and that is the story of the poet Ovid. Chapter 2, Divine Betrayal, Corruption in the Temple. If Chapter 1 revealed the original Medusa as a powerful protective symbol of Earth Mother cults, then Chapter 2 exposes a tragic moment. She was permanently demoted into a monster. This transformation wasn't an accident. It was a deliberate intervention by the supreme gods, a cruel act meticulously and coldly documented. To trace this crime, we must shift from archaeological evidence and Hesiod to the Roman poet Ovid, 1st century BCE. While early Greek works like the Theogony merely described the Gorgons as hideous creatures from birth, it was Ovid, in his Metamorphoses, who crafted the complex, shocking story that is the source of her corruption. This is where the truth about Medusa becomes most painful. Ovid introduces Medusa not as a monster, but as a beautiful maiden with exquisite hair, serving in the temple of the goddess Athena. Medusa was revered for her devotion and beauty, especially her hair, which Ovid described as the most admired of all. This detail is not just literary flair. It is a necessary dramatic contrast, highlighting the horror about to unfold. Her status as a virgin in Athena's temple implied her sanctity and inviolability. However, that sanctity was destroyed. According to Ovid, Medusa was attacked and raped by Poseidon, god of the sea, right inside the temple. This was an act of violence and desecration, not only against her personally, but a blatant violation of Athena's temple. Poseidon's action demonstrates the lawlessness and absolute power of the Olympian gods, where even the most sacred spaces were unsafe from their lust. The choice of location, inside the temple, further escalated the insult and the challenge to Athena. Following this brutal act, punishment ensued, but it was not aimed at the perpetrator. Instead of punishing Poseidon, a powerful god and Zeus's brother, Athena punished Medusa, turning her beautiful hair into snakes and her gaze into death. This is the central twist of betrayal in the entire myth. To analyze the cruelty and absurdity of this act, we must understand Athena's role. Athena is a goddess of war, wisdom, and justice in the Olympian view. Her action should have been to protect the temple's sanctity and punish the defiler. Yet, by punishing Medusa, Athena committed 3 acts of profound destruction. Victim blaming. By turning Medusa into a monster, Athena implied that Medusa bore responsibility for the event, that her beauty tempted Poseidon, or that she had defiled the temple. This is an ancient socio-psychological mechanism used to excuse the powerful and punish the weak, preserving the divine order. Athena could not confront Poseidon, as it would cause internal conflict within the Olympian family. Punishing Medusa was a safe solution, allowing Athena to express her anger over the temple's defilement without destabilizing the male patriarchal power structure. Identity erasure. Athena completely obliterated Medusa's identity, transforming her from a beautiful, devout maiden into a repulsive monster who couldn't be looked at. This was a penalty beyond death. It was a destruction of memory and dignity. This punishment reflects a brutal social reality. Medusa was a casualty of a theological and cultural war. When the patriarchal pantheon rose, the goddesses of the old cults, especially those embodying uncontrollable power, were demoted. The fact that Athena, a goddess born directly from the head of Zeus, symbolizing male dominance, carried out this punishment further solidifies the argument that Medusa was a victim of religious propaganda. The significance of the snake hair. The snake hair wasn't just a random punishment. It was a deliberate distortion of Medusa's origins. In ancient cults, snakes were often symbols of life, rebirth, healing, and fertility power of the Earth Mother. By transforming Medusa's attractive hair into repulsive snakes, Athena turned Medusa's own power and divinity into a curse, a warning against anyone still worshipping the ancient beliefs. This is how the Olympian gods legitimized the overthrow of the snake goddesses and the Earth Mother cults. In summary, Chapter 2 exposes the truth that Medusa is not evil, but a propaganda tool. She is the tragic evidence of how the victors manipulate history, turning the victim into the monster to safeguard their own power and order. If Medusa's corruption was a crime, her hunt by Perseus was a final act to erase the truth. In Chapter 3, we will analyze how Perseus, the acclaimed hero, was actually an unwitting tool of the gods, and how Medusa's severed head continued to serve those who betrayed her. Chapter 3. Perseus and the extermination of Symbol, the unwitting tool of divine authority. If Medusa's corruption was Athena's crime, then the hunt by Perseus was a final act to erase the truth. Perseus, acclaimed as Greece's bravest hero, who used wisdom and courage to slay the terrifying monster, was in reality an unwitting tool manipulated by the gods, an extended arm of the Olympian order. The entire hunt was not a heroic feat, but a brutal ritual to legitimize the eradication of a rival religious symbol. To understand Perseus's role, We must examine his motivation and the assistance he received. Perseus did not act on his free will. He was coerced by King Polydectes, who wished to marry his mother. This was a mission of servitude and political maneuver from the start. More crucially, Perseus was entirely dependent on divine aid, specifically from Athena and Hermes. He was equipped with Hades' cap of invisibility, symbolizing secrecy and avoiding confrontation; Hermes' winged sandals, symbolizing speed and detachment from reality; Hermes' special scimitar, symbolizing the ultimate gifted weapon; and most importantly, Athena's highly polished bronze shield, symbolizing reflection and the refusal of direct confrontation. The fact that Perseus had to use the mirrored shield to approach Medusa is the key detail. He could not look directly into Medusa's death gaze, not merely out of fear of petrification, but because this act symbolizes cowardice and the failure to face the truth. Perseus was not fighting a real monster. He was fighting the reflection of an image disfigured by his own divine patron. This underscores the point. The Olympian gods did not want anyone looking directly at their victim. They wanted the narrative relayed only through a reflective layer, a layer of propaganda. The brutality of this act is further emphasized by the moment Medusa was beheaded. While the other two Gorgon sisters, who were immortal and presumably fiercer, were asleep, Perseus secretly approached Medusa, the only mortal Gorgon. This shows the goal was not to eliminate all Gorgons, but specifically to remove Medusa, the one entangled in the Poseidon scandal. This execution was essentially an order assassination, not a heroic battle. Yet, even after decapitation, Medusa's primal power erupted. From her flowing blood sprang two creatures, Pegasus, the winged horse, and Chrysaor, the giant with the golden sword. This is a critically important mythological detail, for it stresses Medusa was still a fertility goddess. Even in death, she retained her creative divine power, giving birth to wondrous entities. This was a truth the Olympian order could not entirely suppress. And here's a final, cold, and cruel twist of symbolic co-option. Upon his return, Perseus presented Medusa's head to Athena. Athena then took Medusa's head and placed it upon her aegis shield. The legalization of violence. In this way, Athena completed the appropriation of power from the ancient cults. She did not just destroy Medusa. She seized her apotropaic power to serve the Olympian order. Medusa's head on Athena's shield became the ultimate symbol of the victory of the patriarchal order and the subjugation of the primordial goddesses. The immortality of the symbol. The Gorgonian symbol survived, but its essence was corrupted. It was no longer sacred protection from the Earth Mother, but violent deterrent enforced by the new regime. Medusa, even in death, remained a tool protecting the authority of those who betrayed her. In summary, Perseus was merely the executor of a script. He was not the hero confronting a monster. He was a perfect servant executing a religious and social purge. The entire story of Perseus Medusa is a profound indictment of how power regimes use violence, manipulation, and propaganda to eliminate rivals that threaten their dominance. Medusa is not a monster of darkness, but the symbol of the three-tier betrayal. Betrayed by Poseidon violence, betrayed by Athena, victim blaming and identity destruction, and finally betrayed by history, turned into a monster to hide the divine crime. Her story is evidence that the myths we revere are sometimes merely the propaganda written by the victors.